Emily Elizabeth, and I'm the host of the What Fulfills You podcast, a show for and about individuals always seeking to be their best selves. On this show, we talk all about building the mindset, finding the right careers, creating meaningful relationships, and so much more. Welcome to the What Fulfills You podcast. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the What Fulfills You podcast. My name is Emily Elizabeth. I'm your host, and today's episode is recorded in Paris, France, one of my favorite cities. Some of you who follow me on Instagram probably can tell. This episode is focused on something I've been reflecting on while I've been traveling a little bit. This is actually kind of my first travel for the summer, so it's obviously July, but I kind of was sitting still for the past couple of months just to focus. And what I like to do is I often like to focus and what I call sprint, and then I give myself a little bit of rest. And summer is a time period that I know a lot of people tend to travel, but for me, I do also like to allocate time during the summer to travel and move around a little bit, just because it is hotter in New York during this season, and so I don't have as much of an incentive to stay around, whereas fall and spring. Fall obviously is a season I die for, so I love staying in New York when it's in the fall. Winter, there's obviously, as a figure skater, I love elements of winter, so I do enjoy kind of just sticking around in the winter. And then a good part of the spring is also nice as well. Typically besides early spring I'd like to travel a little bit because the weather's not amazing yet in New York, but late spring, in May, I love, just hanging out. So that's my little blurb about New York and when I like to travel and how I think about that and how I plan out my life. But anyways, today's episode is on being mindful about the people you surround yourself with. I haven't talked about this in a while, but it's something that I'm very passionate about, and I actually recently shared this on Threads as well, which is a platform I sometimes will write my thoughts on. And this is something I think about a lot, but I think it kind of came back to mind when I was binge listening to this guy named Graham Weaver. For those of you who are nerds like me, you might have heard of him before. He is, I'm gonna butcher this because I actually don't know the precise information about him, because I kind of discovered him I think on Stanford Business School, on their YouTube channel, and I discovered all the last lectures that he would give to every graduating class. So that's actually kind of how I discovered him. And if I'm not mistaken, he is the founder of one of the top VC firms, venture capitalist firms. I could be slightly incorrect there, but basically he is just very successful in his own right in business. He's invested in a lot of companies. He has spoken in many lectures, and I believe he either was or is some sort of professor at the Stanford Business School. But one thing that I really like about him, and I don't know how much I emphasize this on the podcast, but one thing I really like about Graham Weaver is that he's shared a little bit about not only his success as a businessman and, way to think about life and your career, and the importance of something he emphasized, which is how, he's glad that he did not go down the rabbit hole of putting work first and putting his career first, but actually, because of having great business partners through his career, he allocated time to take his kids to tennis and sports and different things like that. And his business partner took his kids to their recitals and never missed, a music performance, whatever, right? That's something I strongly value as I've grown older, in partner selection, in thinking about how I want to show up in my future life, maybe 10 years from now when I may be a mom and developing a family of some sorts. What does that look like? How do my values show up there? So that's one thing I really love, is when successful people who are clearly very financially successful and also successful in their career, the substance and impact, when they also share how they apply that in their personal life and how they didn't sacrifice at such a cost, And all that to say, that got me thinking about the relevance of being surrounded by people that also think similarly and want similar things. And that's not to say that when you think about this right now, that if you have friends in your life that you know deep down are kind of going in a different direction, or maybe are doing things that are really misaligned with like your values. Like I think an easy example I can think of, just honestly top of mind, where I heard in passing, like, some friends of friends that they were talking about, which was one of them was not being really faithful in their relationship. And I'm not going to sit here and judge or act like I'm a perfect human being, because let me be fair, I am not a perfect human being. That being said, there are different things that we do in life that I think, how do I explain it? I think there are different ways of each of us kind of showing up in our imperfect ways, and also different things that we can do to be more conscious and more aware of our decisions and our actions. And it's something I really try to do throughout my life. And I've always shared publicly, like on this platform and on my social media, and to my friends, that I, for example, was not a great partner when I was in my very first relationship. It was the sole reason as to why my then college boyfriend broke up with me, because I was not a healthy girlfriend at the time. I was 19, 20 years old, just did not know how to regulate my emotions. And look, I know everyone's going to be like, well, you were younger. Of course, that's the case, right? But that's kind of the thing I'm kind of trying to reference, which is that I took that learning curve and really applied it into my life moving forward, where I was like, I want to be surrounded by friends, by women especially, that are better than me, that literally lead with the values that I want to adapt and live more by. So I can think of a friend of mine back in college. I remember this vivid moment. This is going to sound funny to you guys, but I think we were seniors in college, and she was like a newer friend to me. And funny enough, later on, I ended up being one of her bridesmaids, one of her bridesmaids in her wedding. But I remember there was like, when you're washing your hands and you take a towel at the bathroom and then, you throw it in the trash, right? She threw hers in the trash, and she noticed that there were a few paper towels laying around the trash can, and they did not make it into the trash. What did she do? Personally, I can't say I would do this because it's a little gross to me. But again, one of the reasons why I'm like, wow, great to be around people that are leading like this. She literally picked up other people's trash and put it into the trash can. And I remember this, like 5 years later, like 6 years later. And I'm just thinking, wow, like that was such a selfless, I don't know, just like wholesome, honest thing to do. And I remember that 6 years later, you guys. And I share this because that's how much it has impacted me, and like what I call like compounding, when you continue to surround yourself with people that operate in these values and with these values, like how it affects you, how it affects the way you think, how it affects the way you live your life, how it affects what you think is right and wrong and what's the good human thing to do. And again, I want to emphasize that none of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes, myself included. But my belief is that if you are able to surround yourself with people that just lift you up and kind of nudge you to do the right thing, to do the honest thing, or to think bigger and to dream bigger, and people that lift you up to be like, oh no, Emily, you can do better than that, or no, Emily, like, come on, you can dream bigger than that, or hell yes, Emily, I'm so excited for you, right? Which I'm actually reiterating some sentences and phrases I've been told by certain friends of mine in life, whether from years ago, whether new friends of mine. And that's because it's been a conscious decision. It's been a conscious decision since I was a junior in college, where I was like, I put my foot down in life and I was like, I don't have these people in my life yet, but I want those people. So I am going to be extremely mindful in saying yes to being surrounded more by these types of girls, and kindly saying no to the ones that don't embody that. And I remember that moment in college where I definitely kind of kept a distance with someone that just was not operating in the same way that I operate. Again, just going to reiterate, there is no bad or good way to do life, but there is such thing as, that feels like me. I really want to be more like that. And so I think of this in all aspects, not only, the women and the girls that you surround yourself with, your friends. That is such a core piece of your support group, your emotional support system, and how I can at least attest how I've been able to grow as a person because I have such amazing support from women that treat me like a sister, from women that would invite me to their family Thanksgiving or would invite me to their family dinner, family event. It doesn't matter. They treat me like family, and it's something that for me growing up with a very small family and also with immigrant parents and just a little bit of difference in culture and beliefs and all of that, I knew that that's something I wanted to develop, which is family that is not blood, because I believe in it. I believe that that can happen. And lo and behold, many years later, it's what I created. Now, I also want to emphasize this in who you choose as a partner through as you date, right? As you navigate. I'm sure some of you guys are just like in the figuring it out phase, and you're in the thought process and you're learning, and you're never going to get it right in the most perfect way. But I do believe that the more consistently you hear certain themes and certain lessons and certain takeaways from people, the more consistent you hear a specific one, I think the more it becomes ingrained in your head. And so I would say that I think, if your goal in the future is to have a fulfilling long-term relationship and partnership and, ideally build a life with the person that you end up with, I think it's important to think about their values, their way of thinking in life, their friends and who they surround themselves with, and what the values of those friends are. And I'm not saying, okay, be super picky and be super structured and kind of black and white. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just saying this is an area that I believe I personally have in the past, and also I see it a lot in my own friends and friends of friends, which is this nonchalantness of not really caring too much about those things and then living with regret like 5-10 years later, wishing they paid attention more to those things. And I'm actually referencing, I know of a person, I think I probably spoke about it before, but I know of a person that is in her early 30s, very early 30s, and she got married when she was like 26 or 27. She had dated that person for like 4 or 5 years. Then they got married. And then, unfortunately, they divorced after 3 years of marriage. So I think in total, they were together for like 8 or 9 years. And they divorced in her early 30s. And this is an example of something she has talked about to me in our own conversations, which is, wishing she had a stronger group of female friends back then, like that she leaned on them more than primarily leaning on her partner. And I think also, number two, observing the person's values and observing how the person embodies it in the good moments and the bad moments, and really taking it into consideration, before making that commitment. And, luckily for her, she did not have children with this person. So I think that helps, rebuilding life in a easier way in some ways, of course, because when you don't have children with the other person, I think like a divorce and, starting over is a little bit easier. But I think that's a huge lesson to learn and a huge lesson to take away. And so I think all of those thoughts have been coming to mind as I've been walking the streets of Paris and just thinking about life and how appreciative I am of, one of my great friends who's a newer friend of mine as well. Her name is Francesca, and she's been just, taking me around like a local because she lives here and she has friends here. So she introduced me to her friends, and I just sat in gratitude of like, wow, I can't believe that I'm just a girl from a small town in Pennsylvania, and many years later, this is my life. This is like, I'm surrounded by all these people. And while I know I'm lucky, I don't believe that this happened because of luck. I believe it happened because I was so conscious in my decisions as much as I can. Again, I'm not saying that I plan out everything in my life, but I know that with a level of conscious effort and mindfulness, and hey, this is why I'm spending time with this person. Hey, this is why I'm reaching out to this person. This is why I'm continuing to grow this friendship with this person, right? Whoever it may be in your life. Being really aware why I'm doing something has enabled me to plant that seed in other relationships and connections throughout my life. And since the time I made this decision, which was, I think I was probably 20 or 21 years old. So 7 to 8 years later, here I am thinking back to that decision of I was such at a low point in my life. I had no friends, I had no meaningful connections, and I just remember that moment sitting in my apartment in my junior year, and I was like, I am determined to change the direction of my life. And I know that many years from now, I'm going to thank myself. So this is almost like me thanking my younger self at this point, but I know a lot of you guys who listen, some of you are older than me, some of you are around my age, and some of you are a couple years younger. And so it doesn't really matter where you're at age-wise, but it's perhaps that you're in this stage of life where you are like, okay, I'm ready for this kind of shift in my life. I'm not feeling, 100% my best. I need to make certain changes in my life. And maybe this message right here resonates with you. Maybe you're at that pivoting point where you're like, okay, my career is fine, or I know my career direction. Okay, check. This part of my life, not so much. This is what I got to work on, right? I think it happens in different stages for each person, but I hope this episode was helpful and it was thought-provoking and just maybe made you think a little bit as to who you're surrounded by and whether you want to change that or whether you want to improve the types of people you're surrounded by, and whether you feel like you are slightly held back or dragged down in some shape or form by a certain person or by certain people. And remember, it doesn't mean that you have to cut people off cold, although in some cases that might be the best. But in other cases, there is also room to kind of just sporadically spend time with a person, right? Or sporadically spend time with people. Because remember, you really are, and you end up becoming the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most and most frequently. And so the more you're surrounded by people that think big, that have great values, and really lead with that, the more likely you're going to turn into a person that thinks and acts like them too. So be careful with who you choose to be around. I hope you enjoyed this short solo episode. Please let me know if you did. Share this with a friend, especially if you think they could use a little nudge. And if you post this on Instagram, be sure to tag me at Emily E. Duong and the podcast at What Fulfills You. I'm so grateful when I see you guys share this or even just DM me letting me know that a specific episode or certain episodes have been resonating with you. So thank you again. I appreciate it so much, and I will chat with you all in the next episode.